Welcome. You're watching Rugby with Rifle, a podcast about all things rugby and life, with your host, Danny Pabone and Rifle Scudder.
Yeah. So yeah, Danny, after we did, because our first couple of podcasts was just basic rugby 101, how many people in a team, how do you score a point, what is the objective and the aim of the game. So when we did all of that, Danny said, well, what can we do further? So he said, I introduced him to this documentary, which is called, as Danny had said, Chasing the Sun. This is number 2. So I helped Danny set it up and how to get it so that he could watch it. And after doing that, he said, well, why don't we do the next episode of Rifle and Rugby? Why don't we do that on this Chasing the Sun? So I said, I'd love to do it. Obviously, I am, born and raised in South Africa. So, I'm very biased towards the Springbok rugby team. So, but even just watching this, just brought back so many memories, and I sit and watch it over and over again. So yeah, I would love to talk about it. It shows a lot about South Africa, where I grew up, or we grew up, and the struggles we came from in South Africa, but just how valuable rugby itself is to each and everyone in South Africa. But not just that, for a rugby public and for us as a group of Edgewater, to be able to see the game of rugby. So many countries and nations play. The National Rugby Football League, like you were saying, Danny, is now available to us to get involved in. So people want to learn more about rugby. So in this documentary, there's a lot of rugby knowledge that even if you have spoken to a person and there are 15 people on a field, in each team, and you've got to score a try, you don't know the intricacies. You don't know the planning behind a game, and why do you pick certain players, and why do you leave certain players out, and all of these little fine details in rugby make such a big difference. So it's wonderful to know these things, and in this documentary, you see absolutely everything. So there are a lot of rugby documentaries. I remember a while ago, I put up a documentary which they did on the Six Nations, which is the Northern Hemisphere. And in February every year, they have the Six Nations, and they made a documentary on that. It was good. But as I say, once again, and it's not just me saying this, if you go listen to every podcast who watched, and every professional player who watched this series, this is the number 1 documentary on rugby. Hands down, nothing comes close to it. And I'm not just saying that because I'm South African. It is people. They let you into the bathrooms here. They show people's lives. They go into the coach's head literally when they got to pick players, and how do you do that? And it's just phenomenal. So I was shocked when you watch this, the freedom that Rassie and the South Africans gave the camera crew. You can go anything goes. So once again, fair warning from the start, the language is atrocious. The language is shocking. That's the only bad thing about this documentary, is the language. So if you can't handle swearing, do not even watch episode 1. Don't do it. You'll just damage yourself. But it just shows you the way that Rassie, the South African coach, gets to speak to his players, how he motivates them, how he gets through to them, and how he can do that as their coach, and they don't get angry and walk away. So it just allows you to see behind the scenes where no camera is allowed, or nobody really talks about. So it's very exciting to see this, and just it opens up the game of rugby to us all, because in here you see them playing against different teams and how good the different teams are and what their specialities are, but it's all rugby. So as a rugby lover, it's phenomenal.
You get that immediately as soon as you watch it.
Episode 1, the beginning just grabs your attention. You're either going to think, what in the world is this? Why is he saying that? How can you speak to other people that way? And then you realize where and what. But how this thing came about, is the name Chasing the Sun is when President Nelson Mandela came out of prison. And he made one of the first speeches he ever made. In that speech, you know, almost like the I Have a Dream from Martin Luther, you know, he said, Nelson Mandela said, I'm a product of Africa. And he said, one day I want all of our children to play together under the sun. That was his quote in that. I want our kids to play under the sun. And that's where this name, this documentary gets its name from. It's Chasing the Sun. Because we in South Africa with apartheid and all of that, you know, that dream, that vision that Madiba had for all kids to under the sun play together is we are chasing that dream. And we are under the sun. We want to get there. We're striving towards that. We're doing what we can. You know, we've made so many mistakes as a nation, as a country, but we're trying to fix it now. But all of us have to do it together. But that's the name, Chasing the Sun, is where it comes from. It's from President Mandela saying, may our kids all play under the sun. So that's something just extra, just to throw in there. Yeah. And me just looking at that picture.
Yeah. Oh.
Me as a white South African growing up in apartheid, to see a black man holding the William Webb Ellis, and then to hear if someone would say that black guy is actually the Springbok rugby captain. I mean, when I grew up, that was it. It's impossible. It can't be. It just, you know, the way things were. It can't change. And look where we are now, and look what we have done. And there's Siya Kolisi, you know, holding the cup as, man, South Africa's superhero. There are white people. I've got a jersey with his name on. There's a white South African guy who grew up in apartheid who has a black man's jersey with his name on the back. How does that even happen within not even a biblical, you know, generation? This is, I left South Africa in 95, first democratic election. So 30 years, things have changed where black people couldn't even play rugby, where they hated rugby because it was the white symbol of being white. And we had rugby and it was our game, where now all the whites have a rugby jersey with Sia's name on it and they all just love him. And, you know, it's just phenomenal. And this is Chasing the Sun 2 we're talking about here, but there is a Chasing the Sun, the original one. And if you go back to that one, they show you how Sia became captain and all the turmoil that was in South Africa years ago with the rugby and all of that. And as I say, to sit and watch the end product of Chasing the Sun 2 with South Africa's Siya Kolisi lifting the cup for the second time in a row, it's a miracle. It's an absolute dream come true. It's phenomenal. So I love it. I sit and watch it. My son sits and watch it. We sit and watch it. I mean, as I say, swearing is bad, but just cry every single time from thinking where we came from and where we are now. And it's just beautiful to be able to share this rugby dream of South Africa with the rest of the world and the tribe. Yeah, I'm a blessed man. I know it. I've seen so much change, and as I say, things that were just absolutely impossible and couldn't happen, you know, have happened, and not even in 50 or 100 years, in 30. So to look back now and sit back and just see this dream come true, and just it's amazing. It's wonderful. So it's really intriguing to have that hope now, not just in rugby, but in other areas of life. But people often say, why do you like rugby so much? This is one of the reasons, is because I've seen what rugby, the game itself, has done for a nation. This is literally, you know, I've spoken to you about this, where we have a saying in South Africa, in Afrikaans, we say, hulle weet nie wat ons weet nie, which means they don't know what we know. Mm. And in this, you will time and time again, you will hear people from the newspapers and people from television stations, and they will ask Siya Kolisi, like, how did you do it? You shouldn't have won that game. You should have lost. You guys were against the ropes, but you came back. And he says, if you're not South African, you will not understand. Because it's one thing to talk about it. It's one thing to try and explain. I try and tell people, how do you explain the color red to a blind person? Try that. Try and explaining different colors to blind people. That's what it's like growing up in South Africa the way it was. and the progress that we've made, it's still not perfect. It's still bad. It's still very bad. But rugby has made such a difference. And I've lived that. And rugby saved our white asses in South Africa when President Mandela came out of prison. Because you had 6 million whites, and you had 42 million blacks. You can't control 42 million blacks by 6 million whites, but that's what was happening. So if he came out and he said, okay, that's it, we're going to take over, and that's, you've punished us for so many years, we're taking over, we were dead the same day. But rugby was a thing that united us, where he came out and he said, there's been enough bloodshed, we've seen enough war, that's it, now we're going to be the rainbow nation. Every creed, every race, every color, everything that we have in South Africa, 11 official languages, we're going to come together. But what could bring us together? There was only one thing, and that is the beautiful, magnificent, splendid game of rugby that brought us together, that we are watching today, and grown men crying their eyes out when they win or lose, or the joy or the heartache of the game. It's just beautiful. But that's rugby. But if you weren't there, like we say, if you're not South African, you won't understand. And it's rugby that did it for us. And that's why I'm so in love with the game. And that's why I want to just let as many people as will listen just talk a little bit about rugby. And it's not about rugby, it's about life. It's about treating other people the way you want it to be treated, and helping other people as much as you can. But in South Africa, the vehicle to be able to do that, the vehicle to lift up people out of poverty, to go to areas where there's no running water, there's no toilet, they live in shacks, to lift those people up and help, that was through rugby. And the game itself made such a huge difference. And then, because the game is always bigger than the person, you have individuals that rise up to the moment where the game allows them to make a difference, and they grab onto that chance, like our coach Rassie Erasmus. He grabbed onto being this brilliant rugby mind, but not just for himself. He went into the townships, and he went and he got Sia Kolisi, who didn't have food, who was living off of sugar water at night for his supper. And he went and he saw the talent in him, and he picked him out. And he has now won 2 Rugby World Cups. And he, as I said before, is South Africa's superhero. So people came around the game and they merged. And today you have Chasing the Sun 2, this miracle, because all of that has taken place. Man, I'll talk so much. I'm talking too much. Let's go to the program. Sure. I'm sorry.
No, don't be sorry. This is amazing. I mean, Tribe, this was not part of the program. So
Not at all.
Watching here is inspired, and I'm loving it. I'm truly loving it. And just to touch upon what you just so eloquently spoke about. Wow, amazing. It's like Mandela had the wisdom of Solomon at that moment, because it's like you said, Mandela could have came out and say, hey, we're going to take over the whites, we're going to destroy them because they haven't been good to us. No, but he chose another route.
Right.
He chose a route of unity.
Yep.
And not revenge.
Yep.
So that in itself is a beautiful story, an amazing story.
Yeah, it is.
So yeah, wow. Wow, thank you for that. Rifle. That was amazing. Thank you for watching this episode of Rugby with Rifle. Remember to press the like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet, to support this podcast.